All right, folks, welcome another edition of 86 Boxing chatting with a very special guest. And I mean, if you are a fan of boxing history, I am positive you've run across his channel or some variations of videos that he's put out there that the world is becoming aware of. And we have nothing but thanks for him, those that are stewards of the boxing history. So it's none other than at Fight Film Guy himself, Mr. Carl Weingarten. How are you
Pleasure to
doing
be
today,
here.
Carl?
I'm good. How are you doing, Joshua?
Hey, I'm doing great. We've had some exchanges here over the past, I would say, a year or so. We exchanged some emails, but I followed your page for a long period of time because, yeah, you just have a lot of content that you've put out there. And then I found it fascinating. So I ended up going to your blog there, Carl. And in doing so, I just was able to get a bit more understanding of kind of what you do and what all goes into it. And I was like, that's a story I certainly want to know about. And so I reached out. So I appreciate you being here. And with
My
that, I wanted to kind of just start with of all sports boxing history, what kind of led you or got you into that specifically?
I was thinking about this, and I can't remember exactly. I think it was over maybe a couple of years. Um, I don't because I didn't follow boxing or anything until um, I think it was I started taking photos when I was 8, and got interested
Mhm.
in filmmaking when I was an early teenager, and studying film history first. I wanted to go to film school and do that. I was also into athletics and sports and all of that. And um, I went to a summer camp and uh, and when I was a kid, and they had like an outdoor arts and crafts table with a stack of magazines, so that when kids have their spare time, they can go through stuff. And I found a copy of Sports Illustrated, and I remember they had an expose of very famous fights, and it was like one page was an illustration from the fight, and then the other page was a description of it, and they were like the classics, Dempsey and Tunney and Lewis and Kahn, I think Robinson, Lamada, Willard and Johnson, and I read these accounts over and over again because there wasn't much else, it was just sort of fascinated me. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And there was a mention that there was films of it. And I'm like, really? It didn't occur to me. I thought they were just, history was like pictures in the book. So then shortly thereafter, a neighbor of mine, his brother was a fighter, and it was on the same card for an event with Mickey Walker fought on the same card. That was kind of a big
Oh,
story for him. And he said, oh yeah, you can, there's this magazine called Ring Magazine and these others. And so I went out and bought one, and immediately was like, oh, I've got to subscribe, and this is so cool and all this. And I of course saw the ads for Ring Classics, and Big Fights Incorporated was selling 8mm versions of what I later realized were these abridged 10 and 12-minute highlights that they used to show on television. So they were now selling them as 8 and Super 8mm.
mm.
So I started collecting those and getting really interested in that, and then reading the circumstances around the fights and the history. And then the first Ollie Frazier fight happened, and that sort of everything, kind of the perfect storm. It was so much excitement. It was like, this is so cool. So I was in that world at that point.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And yeah, kind of crazy. Yeah, it shows the small world there. You had a neighbor who had a brother that boxed or someone that boxed. So yeah, small world for sure. And I think the eras back in the day, thinking about the Dempseys and beyond, so forth, I think they're some of the most exciting and intriguing eras when you just think about the stories that are tied to the sport. Very different compared to now. Of course, for the better, it's a lot safer now, I would say, than maybe it was back in the day. And we have some evidence of that through some of this video and everything, but there are just so many
Oh yeah.
characters that I've seen from those time periods, and it was truly like to be a prize fighter. Yeah, it was a rough and rugged sport to a degree that I think most don't really get that understanding until you look into some of the stories tied to some of these older boxers from back during those periods.
Yeah, there's a conception that boxing has always been the same, and that the way it is now is always some variation of what it is like now. That fights
Mhm.
were easily put together, the money was available, there were ready venues, there was media, and that simply wasn't the case. I mean, boxing evolved through on multiple eras over 100 years, beginning with, I mean, really, you see those photos of John L. Sullivan and Jake Kilrain. I mean, they're literally, it's in
Right.
Louisiana, and they're in the middle of the woods, and there's some bleachers and a few hundred guys. And now
Oh,
we regard
yeah.
that as like, this was for the heavyweight championship of the, it's like it was little more than like a neighborhood backyard event. I mean, that's exaggerating, but that's what it was. And then it evolved further into, um, I guess, once the Marquess of Queensberry started setting the rules were
Yes.
established, and then more gloved fights, then it kind of moved into the athletic clubs, and a
Yeah.
lot of fighters, merged into those and began working out and trading techniques and exchanging that sort of thing, and then the business began, to evolve, and then on and on.
Oh yes, yes indeed. And as shout out to those in the chat. You were here again. Boxing history. We're talking it with Carl Weingarten, and that is the Fight Films guy there at Fight Films Guy on YouTube. So thank you to those that have sub. Cheers to Rasclot 222 in the building there. Dan, appreciate you. Dan mentions Jesse James was there on the run for the law. Yes, at the Sullivan Kilray fight. Yeah, pretty crazy to think about it, right? But it was worth that much to him to even try and evade law just to be at that fight. Historic. And thank you to
Yeah.
Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more in the building as well. Appreciate you there, Bruce Gas. Go sub to Bruce Gas, folks. Great content right there on his channel for history. And of course, sub to at Fight Films Guy. Now, Carl, and I see right there behind you, I believe that is actual film, right? This is film that you've collected here over the years, if I'm not mistaken, there behind you.
Yeah, I'm in one of my storage places, so that's some reels there and some LPs as well.
Okay.
I have a lot of stuff sealed in cabinets, so I can't really show them. And I thought, well, this would be a way to at least show you, a few reels.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, that's certainly something I wanted to get to there because I think some people might not realize it, but you're actually doing that film transfer. I don't know the particulars of the process in itself, but you're doing that yourself there, Carl. So when did you start building this collection? And I know you mentioned photography. Is that what ultimately led you down that path with the film as well?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I had my own dark room and shot photos in junior high and high school and movies, and then studied filmmaking and college. And I was collecting fight films casually when I was a kid. It was all Super 8 stuff because that was what was accessible. And I didn't
Mhm.
really know other collectors or anything other than I was just buying what was available. Um, and then for some years, once I got out of film school, I had access to 16 millimeter equipment. So that became obvious to me to start acquiring the bigger format of those things that were around. And then a number of years went by where I was only casually following boxing and not doing a lot of collecting. And
Mhm.
then about 20 years ago, um, I went to New York to meet up with a friend of mine who I grew up with, his name's Richard O'Brien, and he
All
worked
right.
as an editor for Sports Illustrated for many years, and he was the boxing editor for
Wow.
Sports Illustrated. So we were kind of like, it was he and I were the two pals for for boxing. We were both into it, training together and following it and all that stuff. We went to see closed circuit fights together and stuff. So here he was at Sports Illustrated, and so he got to take me to the Mosley Cotto fight and sit in the press row, and that was a lot of fun. But we had lunch that day with Steve Lott, who was
Oh
at that
yes.
time, he was Big Fights Incorporated. He was the surviving member of that company. And so he knew Richard, and they introduced us. We went to have lunch, and and Steve made a reservation at the restaurant for us under Ketchel. So
Okay.
so we arrived. The Ketchel party was there. So we sat down and had lunch and talked, and certainly became friends after. So I kind of got a jump start again, and I had some films, and I acquired a couple of other collections and other films along the way, just ever since then. So accumulated quite a bit in the last 20, 25 years, really, much
Wow.
more so than I had earlier. Um, and To share them online and to share them with other people, of course, they had to have video. So to have stuff professionally transferred from film to rendered to video at good quality, uh, the technology is there, but it's expensive. It's not easily accessible. And
Ooh.
I spent some time studying all kinds of various technologies, homebrew technologies that are out there. Some of them better than others. Some of them render okay, but not really in high resolution.
Hmm.
So, um, but a couple companies, and more recently, a number of inventors have been approaching this problem. So there are laser scan machines that are available that do really high resolution transfers, capturing all that film information onto video at high resolution or multiple K quality, and it's pretty amazing because once you, especially the 35 millimeter prints, the theatrical prints that they made for many years,
Hmm.
once you enlarge that stuff and get into the in detailed scan, it's amazing what you see. I mean, it's not entirely far away from what you would see on a high resolution um, television, video screen.
Wow.
There's differences, and there are people that might debate with me, but I mean, I'm seeing expressions on the fighters' faces that you would only see really if it was in high resolution or you were close to the ring. Um, and of course, you see, along with that, then you see all kinds of movement, and we get real insights into strategies and how the fight is progressing. If someone's hurt, how hurt they are, what's going on. You see corner reactions, all kinds of stuff that you don't see looking at a little 10-inch, 12-inch TV screen.
Oh
Suddenly you
yeah.
can really see all this stuff in high detail. So I've acquired equipment that I can scan these films at a high resolution and get a good look at it. Um, the films that are of most value to me, I will outsource to like Hollywood top level
Wow.
scanners. Just that extra step up because it really matters to me, to preserve what I have.
Wow. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing there, and like we commend you. Everyone should be giving a nod there to Carl because yes, there's footage out there of some of these fighters that, and the funny thing is, I still even here with my channel, like, I'll get comments and things of that nature of people who haven't seen some of these fighters from back during some of these older eras, and they don't even know that there is some stuff out there. So it's always a pleasure to be able to direct them and send them to like, oh yes, there is a bit of footage out there on such and such fighter. So that is pretty amazing that you're doing there. I know you
Well, this,
mentioned Steve Lott. I never did get a chance to meet him, but I was familiar with him just from the collection space, and I know that he was someone who was certainly big on boxing history and had a large collection there, as you mentioned.
oh yeah, he was part of Big Fights Incorporated, and which was Bill Caton and his
Mhm.
business partner, um, that they began acquiring these classic fight films, I believe, going back to the 40s, maybe the 50s, and
Mhm.
repurposing them for television broadcasts. And the interesting thing about these films, especially the early films, is uh, many of them weren't legal. They weren't
Oh yeah.
they weren't bound or owned by one particular party. They were shot at the time to capture an event, circulated in the theaters for a short time, and then many of them were just disposed of because, of course, the
Mhm.
next fight happening 6 months later. That's what people care about. They don't care about what happened a year ago. Now, 100 years later, we want some insight. We want to be able to realize that those films and see them. So they spent many years acquiring as much of that material as possible, as well as other independent collectors.
Yeah.
Um, they went through their own journeys looking for material.
Mhm.
I do it. I still try and do that today. I have a number of friends who are very aggressive about trying to recover lost films or fighters, and it's getting more and more scarce because
Yes.
time rolls on, and stuff that's stored may deteriorate in place. So there are people, collectors, still carrying on, and they're doing extremely valuable work.
Wow. Wow, yeah, that is pretty amazing. So, yeah, I've always wondered about that. And of course, people on the channel and other channels that I've interacted with, they always wonder and think about sort of the notion that, hey, there might be other stuff that is out there. We have a great deal now. It is amazing that we have stuff going back to the 1800s that is on film. So, no question about it. It's amazing that we do have that, but of course, there's always the wonder, like what else might be out there. There's some very polarizing fighters, some who had 200 plus fights, but we have no fight footage, and people want to see that, you know?
We have to remember also in those days to shoot a film, especially, I mean, certainly into the early 1900s, it was very expensive. It was a very specialized occupation.
Hmm.
I mean, there weren't thousands of film companies. There were, I don't know the number, but maybe the hundreds or tens.
Oh, yeah.
Um, in the case of the Johnson Ketchel fight, they hired a company, I believe, from the East Coast to come out
Mm.
because there was they were contracted to do that. So that's often what would happen is that there were these film companies that would normally shoot for newsreels, or they were
Yes.
hired to shoot by a movie company to capture this or that. I mean, it was with new technology, and they were looking for ways to make money with it. And so these companies would be hired. Some of them, well, most of them didn't really specialize in shooting fights, filming them. They would
Oh, yeah.
show up and do the best they could with it. Some of them were savvy enough, and they did an amazing job capturing the action, and some of them did an absolutely horrible job of capturing the action. And you're squinting, trying to see what the heck is going on because the
Yeah.
camera is halfway into the audience, but they kind of didn't know. And one thing about, I should say about that, is those films where they had, you're looking at it, just it's a steady shot of the ring and the fighters are running, back and forth through it,
Yes.
like Keystone Cops or something. In the theater in those days, the audience was looking at a 30-foot screen. They weren't looking at a laptop or a television set. So in the
Oh, yeah.
theater, those guys on the screen, they look pretty big. They look like maybe they would look if you were at the fight. I mean, that was kind of what they were trying to capture.
Okay.
Um, but there were, as time went on, then and the film technology got more affordable and more common on into the 1910s, and certainly by the 1920s, they were able to start shooting inside without burning up the fighters with these hot lights. Um, and the film was more flexible, and the cinematographers got more savvy about placement of the camera, and and this evolved not just in the U.S. but all over the world. I mean, in Europe, they have a very, very rich filmmaking history, and they did a much better job of preserving their heritage, film heritage, than we
Hmm.
have in the United States. There's all kinds of film in France and in the
Oh yeah.
UK, some of which we've gotten to see in recent years. That's pretty amazing. And it's thrilling to see the American fighters, particularly the African Americans who went over there to fight,
Yes.
were not filmed over here, but they were filmed over there because they were stars over there.
Yes.
And those have been preserved. Some of them not very well, but some of them, we get a decent look at these fighters that are so fascinating.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is pretty awesome. That's sort of a rarity there. But yeah, France playing the role. Yeah, UK in general, Australia. So I know a number of them were big stars there in
Yeah.
Australia as well. So they would
Mhm.
host some big fights, and then there were some promoters. Hugh McIntosh, he's one from down during that period
Yes.
who was big on bringing some of those heavyweights in. That would fight there. So that is awesome and amazing. And so I'd imagine, yeah, there's probably even more stuff out there in those countries as well, where people might still be preserving some things and so forth. But it
We're
would be
hopeful.
amazing to just kind of keep that going. So we'll continue to be on the lookout for such. So
Mhm.
that's yeah. The process in itself is sort of just the thought of it. It just stretches my mind, and I'd imagine it takes a good period of time. But about say you have a film, and we have varying lengths because there are some fighters out there. We may have like a minute of them in action, some where we have their full fight, things of that nature. About how long does it take when you're going through that process? It seems pretty meticulous, at least from just my perspective.
Um, the process specifically, what part of the process?
Well, to transfer it or whatever goes into making it digital or putting
Oh,
it in
okay.
a digitized format that
Yeah.
allows you to upload it to YouTube or whatever from the, I guess, dark room
Right.
from the film itself or however.
Yeah. There's a machine that most of these machines, they're the film, it looks like a projector, but it's not
Hmm.
projecting onto a screen. The film is being projected into a camera.
Okay.
So a camera is set up that is viewing exactly the size of the frame, and that camera is capturing those frames at high definition.
Okay.
And it's set up as a in a like a strobe format. So the film runs fairly slowly across, and the video camera is snapping a picture of every frame that goes
Okay.
by. And then that though, and actually they are, each one is its own unique image, a high resolution image. And then through software, you convert all those images in a row to create a video,
Yeah.
which you can then change the speed, you can manipulate it, you can do restoration of it, you can sort of repair scratches and things like that with that. So once it gets, the film is rendered into a high definition video, then there's all kinds of possibilities for changing it and restoring it, and the technology is improving as we go. So it's going to get even better and better. One thing I've been thinking about, and I would love to get access to it, is that, do you remember recently the director who did the Lord of the Rings movies? He did a
Peter Jackson.
film, I think it was called
Is it Peter Jackson?
1918 or film. Did
Broke up there for a little bit.
I lose you?
Carl. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, the
Can you hear
screen went
me?
blank just for a second.
Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, yeah, I
You're
can hear
back
you
in the
now.
mix. Okay, yeah. Same
All
here on
right
this
then.
side. You had went out
Anyway,
a bit.
this guy, I don't, okay, all right. Well, I don't want to nerd out too much here, but
No, no,
this
no. We want
director
to
did
hear this.
a
No, we
film
want to hear
where
this
they
for sure.
used He did a process where he took these films from World War I that were at a slow, very slow frame rate. So
Hmm.
in order to make them seem the films naturally appear natural and the people in it to appear to move naturally or in as in real life, the computer actually generates new frames based on the previous frame that's actually there. I
Oh
don't know
wow.
how better to explain it. So you've got like 10 frames of a sequence, but the sequence is slow. And if you just ran it as it is, the person might like walk really fast. But if you fill in those frames with those moments in between those frames, and the computer takes all that information and goes, well, in this frame, the guy is just a little bit over here. So they just move him over here. So there's all
Oh,
this
wow.
matching of the action. So now it seems smooth and it seems natural. And I know this process is really expensive, but it would be great to do that with some of these early fight films, which we can slow them down, but the choppy action, our eye is used to a certain way.
Oh
It
yeah.
is trained to watch movement in a certain way. So even though I can slow the frame rate down of like a fight film so that there's an exchange of punches and I could go, okay, from here to here, that's about the length of time it would take these two guys to do a trade and fall against the ropes. But it looks choppy.
Yeah.
In order to slow it down, there's very few frames to work with. So your eye sees those jumps, as opposed to having part of high resolution is that you have you're stacked in there's 60 frames a second. So your eye really can't see that. And it's almost too much. That's why like high res action sometimes look weirdly smooth, and it's
Oh yeah.
not. It's just that our eye is used to a certain blurring of things, and everything is perfect. So it would be nice. It would be just great to some of these films that look choppy to us now in view or too fast, actually slowing them down and adding the lost material or the unseen, uncaptured material. Some of that, there's some of it now. There's some of it there
Hmm.
where you can get, you know, service will give us a film and we'll render this at 60 frames per second. And there are a number
Hmm.
of boxing sites where they've rendered that, and some of it looks better than others. Some of it looks not very good at all. Some of it really is kind of compelling. It depends on how good the original is. If the original
Oh yeah.
material is good, then it's going to render well. Like same with colorizing. If the original
Hmm.
material is really clean and smooth, the software can see everything and it knows what to do and where to put the colors. When stuff's um, choppy or the film is dirty or cracked or there's a lot of distortion or out of focus, the the software can't adjust very well and you get terrible results. Like there are a number of sites now that put up colorized versions of
Oh yeah.
old films. It's kind of been a thing to do. I'm not crazy about that. Not that I don't want to see it, but that technology is really going to improve a lot over the next few years. And what we're seeing now looks kind of like hand tinted. It's
Yes.
sloppy. It takes away from it. Doesn't really. It's interesting the first time, but it's really the stuff. You know, a few years from now, that stuff is not going to be watchable to us because they're going to
Oh
be
yeah.
able to do that so much better. And just goes to show there's so many people working on this kind of stuff, and that's good. And that's good.
Yeah.
That a lot of collectors and fans and stuff are just doing what they can to do to preserve this material and to present it to people so they can see these things.
Oh yes, yeah, no, that's a great point there, Carl. Yeah, and I know of some programs that allow you to do stuff like add the coloring or whatever it may be, but it's certainly different or a far cry from, say, some of the projects that the Smithsonian has done, like World War
Yes.
II in color, that type of stuff. You can
Right.
just
Yeah.
tell there's a major difference right there, major resources that have gone
Yeah.
into that as well. So yeah, I do suspect that improvement will continue to come about. And some of the things you were mentioning, those are some of the things that I've kind of thought about. Yeah, where maybe software, artificial intelligence fills in some of these gaps by virtue of,
Mhm.
even if it were like trained through like actual accounts of a fight that were captured in newspapers, articles, or whatever it may be, to use that in concession with, say, some of the video clips that are there to kind of just pull all of that stuff together. That would be pretty amazing. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that there's so much potential for that. And as with any new technology, there's always the potential for corruption too.
Oh yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
I can see it. I mean, we see it now. We see the they're posting video game fights between um, classic boxers. That's not really them. It's just sort of, it's a manufactured video game
yeah.
version of that, and somebody's imagining what it would be like, and it's speculation. That's
Hmm.
part of the interest. That's the fascination of the sport, is the speculation of what ifs and potential and stuff like that. So I'm really more. I think that AI. I like the idea of AI enhancing what's already there,
Yeah.
and bringing out what's already there, and more clarity, not
Mhm.
making stuff up.
Oh yes, yes. No, yeah, yeah, you're right. And it's yeah, some of these programs have gotten pretty crazy because I've seen online with some of the AI videos of actual like celebrities or things of that nature, where they're doing things that they actually didn't do or whatnot, and they're speaking. It's like the voice, everything looks real, but it's actually not. It's
Hmm.
pretty crazy. Just
Yeah, it
thinking
is.
about it.
It's nuts. We can, the trained eyes, we can still kind of tell when something's not quite right. I
Oh
mean, we've
yes.
got, we are creatures with millions of years of programming by nature to get our eyes and ears and our senses to work, for hunting and for survival, and so, and for, getting together, and so we know how to, we can see real details and things, and when we're used to, we know when something's not quite right. But this technology is eventually going to get to a point where it's going to be very difficult to tell. And
Oh yeah.
as those of us age, and who, the younger people who never saw the original material,
Oh
they
yeah.
become less and less exposed to that. They're really not going to know the difference. Um, so interesting world ahead for sure.
Oh yes, 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 indeed. There, yeah, great points, for sure. There, Carl. Real quick, shout out to everyone who's still here in the mix. We are here with Carl Weingarten, Fight Films guy right here. I dropped a little channel link down there, so be sure to check that out, folks. At Fight Films guy, a lot of old footage that is there that has been restored, different variations of things, different eras, and I think you all will really enjoy it. So I appreciate you all dropping by. Shout out to Ranger Danger in the mix here as well. Appreciate you dropping by there, Ranger Danger. So one of the boxers, Carl, I think that
Yeah,
people want to most see. We have newsreel footage of him, and that is, of course, is the Pittsburgh Windmill Harry Greb.
yeah,
There, Carl. He is probably, if I could think of any fighter that I would imagine that the most people who are interested in boxing want to see, it would probably be Harry Greb. And we do have newsreel footage. It is polarizing in a sense that he is one of those individuals, 200 plus fights or around there, crazy amount of fights, beat a lot of talent, beat so many good fighters. And we don't have footage of him outside of sort of the newsreel footage. So it's hard for some people to conceive or conceptualize how good he is. But one thing I always say there, Carl, you can't take away from the fact that hey, the fights happen. He got the victories. You know that right there. You can't change. So clearly, he was a great fighter and all of that stuff. But I would say there are so many people interested in film of him, and I'd imagine you probably heard that as well at different points there, Carl.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's ironic. It's always the fighters that we don't have material of that. That's the one that everybody's the most interested in. They're less interested in the stuff we have than the stuff we that is not available. It's just kind of ironic. Um, and part of that is again the era, his weight class. There were not
Mhm.
that many fights were filmed at the time, and it was also the era of Jack Dempsey. So
Oh yeah.
there was just a tremendous amount of excitement going on, and so quickly as compared to 5 and 10 years earlier, that there was
Hmm.
just a lot of material just did not wasn't stored, or there was a period where material was stored, and then there were some. I read that there were some warehouse fires.
Oh yeah.
The Second World War came along, and a lot of stuff got disposed and tossed out. And unfortunately, I mean, if he had more, if there were more films that had been made of his fights, we might see some. But apparently, there weren't very many. Um,
Yeah.
he became, I believe, most famous in the 20s as his career was peaking and he was beginning to wind down. So
Hmm.
it's likely that I read that there was films of at least one fight with Gene Tunney, and maybe the Tiger Flowers fight. But
Yes.
again, it's just um, some stuff survives and some doesn't, and there's no rational, real, explanation for that. It's just luck. Uh, there were not thousands of these prints made. There were maybe dozens of these prints that were
Hmm.
made, and theaters would show them, and in many cases they would throw them out, or they'd put them in a storeroom. I have a copy of the Bayer Carnera fight on
Oh,
35
okay.
millimeter, and
Wow.
it was found in the attic of a movie theater
Wow.
with other films because they showed it. Um, and this was again during a period where there was some prohibition about fight films,
Oh
so
yeah.
they were not widely distributed, and it was just put into storage. Luckily, it wasn't thrown out, but they were put into storage. And then later, when the theater was cleared out, they had it, and somebody had the foresight to say, "Well, let's put this up for an auction and see if people want it." So there's stuff that's stored away that we don't know. We hope hasn't been discovered yet. Occasionally, we hear of something.
Hmm.
The the footage of Firpo and Wills came to light
Oh,
not
okay.
all that long ago.
Yeah.
Um, Someone had that material with a couple of reels stored in their house that apparently their family had acquired at some point. Just clips, and so we have a glimpse of that, as well as I think it's Mickey Walker. Um,
Hmm.
so it's it's just bad luck. The stuff that survives versus the stuff that does not. Um, and at least we have some of it. And you mentioned earlier about the AI. I mean, we do have photographs, lots of photographs
Oh
of
yeah.
Harry, and I think it'll be likely that, well, at least for entertainment purposes, AI can sort of animate them. So we have a short, so you see some movement or whatever. It's going to
Yeah.
be certainly would be entertaining. That would to do that, but um, like you said, we have the newspaper accounts, which some are a lot more reliable than others, but it's
Hmm.
information as opposed to no information. And his record certainly stands. There are other films that, uh, even more recent materials that people would really love to hear for whatever reason. The Jerry Quarry Buster Mathis fight, for
Mhm.
Jerry Quarry fans, that's a sort of a holy grail, because that's the one big part of his career, of both of them, that's still missing,
Hmm.
and believe it to be at this point lost, because the fight just predated VHS home recording, and the network had a habit of just erasing over tapes because tapes were too expensive. They didn't want to
Wow.
spend the money, so rather than storing material, they erased over them. So we're lucky that we do have some of that stuff from the '60s, that we
Hmm.
do have, that the championship stuff they've pretty much preserved, but it's the non-title fights, though, some really great non-title fights that have
Yeah.
been lost, or we only have partials of, unfortunately. But I mean, the Jerry Quarry Joe Frazier was an example of that. It was thought that parts of it were lost. Steve Lott had, all the rounds, but the beginnings and in betweens, all that stuff's kind of not there. Although I did hear from Steve Compton that everything, that all that footage, somebody has it, or Madison Square Garden, or somebody has it. But
Okay.
the Garden, a lot of those venues, they captured fights and then disposed of the films, or when there's a change in management, or the
Hmm.
venue moves, or money, or space, or storage. Same old story. This event was 10 years ago. Who cares? And
Hmm.
so it's up to people around them, or collectors, to really pursue and ask ahead of time. Do you have stuff that you want to get rid of, that you're keeping? Keep asking. Just go and ask. You'd be surprised what turns up. But it's always that material is always kind of on the clock. It's just a matter
Oh
of
yeah.
time before it goes away. Either as material, the old acetate stuff,
Hmm.
um, 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 or even the videotapes deteriorating as well. So it's up to the persistent fans and collectors to try and preserve, and hopefully preserve the stuff well, and is good quality as possible, so it lasts for a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah, and certainly I think that a lot of us who are involved here will keep pushing that. But that's fascinating to hear, and I certainly can understand the dynamic of how, yeah, some stuff would get recorded over a loss, especially when you tie in the expenses and such. Yeah, certainly unfortunate, but I can understand that dynamic. And of course, we now have so much more available as far as storage, what technology can
Right.
do, cloud storage, things of that nature. Just imagine having that back then. We'd have it all. but but yeah, still, I am happy, as you mentioned, that we do have the stuff that we have. But Greb, he's one of those names that popped up, and I had heard as well, Carl, about the some of what you mentioned in some of the films being destroyed. And I know it was even mentioned in some videos of some silver content being used. I know Dan pointed that out or something like that. And I've heard that some of the old film was like nitrate and things of that nature. And it was highly
Yeah,
flammable, and so that deterioration, there might have been even some things that were just deteriorated just because of that only.
right. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I mentioned when I said acetate. I meant nitrate. Nitrate is like flammable. It's like
Okay.
explosive material. Um, but it was good material to to put film emulsion on, because it was flexible, and I guess in the 1800s and early 1900s, that's what they used, and they had to take special precaution to keep the stuff dry and away from heat and stuff. But if it's not stored properly, it will deteriorate. And I mean, for instance, if I have it here,
Oh, wow.
yeah, this
Yeah.
right here, this is part of the ending of the
Wow.
Tierney Heaney fight.
Wow.
I have a 35 millimeter print of it. Well, it was wrapped very tight, and stored on this original metal reels that were rusted. So I have most of the fight, but just as the fight ends, I don't know if you can see, and it probably not. This is a terrible way to show this, but
Yeah.
it's deteriorating,
Oh, I see.
and
Interesting.
it becomes sticky, it becomes like masking or Scotch tape practically, and it's gets very gooey, so it's impossible to project it. And the best that can happen, there's a process where the film is soaked in some materials, and over a long period of time, it's able to be unwound, dried, and then projected again. But for a long time, film of this age, and this is 1928, would go
Wow.
this way if it was not stored, sealed, and kept dry. Um, so that's kind of the way that goes. Yeah.
Wow. That's a piece of history you have right there, Carl. That's amazing right there. That's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Lucky I have the rest of the film, got that transferred and got a good look at that. And so, and that was pretty cool. So, I'm just glad to have whatever we have, whatever I
Yeah.
have. It's really, it's a gift. It's all, it's all a blessing.
Oh yeah, no, that is pretty amazing right there. What you do there. I see Alistair Overeem welcome. He says some museums have unreleased film, like the Skirball in L.A. has films of several Jewish fighters that isn't available online. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I've also heard, Carl, that there are some like private collectors. I don't know it to be true. They say that there are some like private collectors who have footage if they don't want anyone else to see it, something like that. But
No, there's sort of a the collector's creed, as
yeah.
it were, that it's not just this. It's like, art collections or
Hmm.
whatever the passion is, that the rare stuff, you kind of keep it to yourself, you acquire it, and there's sort of the idea that if I keep this and I don't share it, then it's valuable.
Hmm.
And well, to me, it's not really valuable unless somebody wants it, unless somebody,
Right.
you can share it with somebody. And there's 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 value in that you have stuff that's of high value, and therefore you can bargain with other collectors, and you can exchange material, circulate, exchange materials, and grow your collection, and they grow their collection.
Hmm.
And they're those people who are they're not interested in that. They just acquire stuff, and then every collector can choose to do what they want to do. And museums, as the poster said, there are these institutions that have materials, and they're not interested in posting them online
Mm.
because they feel it has value. But in many cases, we don't even know what they have. We don't know what's there. It
Oh
would be
yeah.
nice to know, to have an accounting of what does exist, so that there's at least that knowledge of it. And there was an organization, I haven't been in touch with them for a few years, but they wanted to round up the listings by um, various collectors to just get an accounting of what's there,
Hmm.
not to broadcast who has what um, specifically, or to make any of that material deliberately available if the collector doesn't want to do that.
Oh yeah.
But just to have an accounting of stuff, and there's a lot of material that isn't visible, that would be nice to know. Many of it may not be that big of a deal,
Hmm.
but it's something, and it might be a fighter who fought another famous fighter, but we get to see them in action in a
Oh
different
yeah.
context. There's so many of these championship fights where all we see is the one fight with a challenger who, depending on the case, may have done really well, but there's
Hmm.
no other material available of them, so we don't see them in a different context. um, I like kind of rounding up material by the contenders,
Oh yeah.
and kind of see, kind of put together that period of history, like for instance, the late 30s
Hmm.
in the heavyweights. Of course, Joe Louis is approaching his peak. Well, there was kind of a round robin that went on with the contenders. Louis was going through a number of contenders, some better than others, but there was Tony Galento made the surprise showing against Louis.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then Max Baer, who had gone mostly
Mhm.
undefeated since losing to Louis. He lost to the English champion, and then won in the rematch. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, so he fights Lou Nova, who's coming up, who's an amateur
Oh yeah.
champion, who's doing well. Nova defeats Bayer. Bayer gets badly cut and can't continue. Nova fights Galento, loses to Galento. Bayer fights Galento, beats Galento. Nova fights Bayer again and wins a second time at the end of Bayer's career.
Oh yeah.
So there was this round robin of contendership that was going on, not unlike today. I mean, that's kind of how only it was, moving. And so Lewis is watching these guys fight each other. So finally it comes down to Nova's finally going to fight Lewis for the title. Bayer's retired. Galento is
Hmm.
over the hill. He's no longer. So it's Lou Nova. This was like going to be a big deal. And the fight ended up being a blowout.
Oh yeah.
Nova was unprepared. And Lewis took him apart. I would love to see that film, but that's one of the few films of Lewis championship fights that is not widely circulated because accordingly it was so one-sided and it was a huge disappointment. Of course, if we see it now, to us it's going to seem more interesting, but in that
Yes.
day it was like a blowout. Who cares? It was I don't want to say of the exact comparison, but um Mayweather Pacquiao of
Oh yeah.
1941, sort of like, what happened? What was that? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so, but guys like Lou Nova, I liked seeing him in action in other fights because he was a really good fighter and he had a very
Yes.
bad night against Lewis and others as well. And luckily, once boxing came on television in the 50s,
Hmm.
and they began preserving those kinescopes, we can see a lot of these
Oh
guys
yeah. Yeah.
that we couldn't. And then, of course, into the 60s and 70s and on, there's a lot of contender fights that we still have. A lot of them we don't have.
Hmm.
I believe that my friend Steve Compton this is a few years ago, just finally found Lyle and Bonavino
Oh wow.
footage. He found that fight. He wrote that it took like 20 years to find it, and he
That's.
had to do a lot of digging. So, I mean, that would have been a big fight at the time, but it was not. It was not a wide world of sports. Anything that wasn't on a network, most of
Hmm.
that stuff is gone or was not filmed, unfortunately. Um,
Oh yeah.
and of course, we knew, those of us who lived through that era, we felt it was special because we were coming of age. It was, for us, it was special. We look back on it now, of course, it's still a pretty amazing period of time, and we wish more stuff had been captured and more of those events filmed and stuff. But there is so much material that is there that we can enjoy.
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah, amazing stuff right there. And Dan mentioned Tommy Farr. Yeah, the English lad
Yeah,
there.
that's right.
Tommy Farr.
Good
Yeah,
catch on
yeah,
that. Bad
yeah.
memory over here.
Hey, no, hey, you have so much stuff, so much content that you've
I know
gone through there.
you can't
You
remember
know?
everything. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
love
happens.
boxing. I love boxing. I've been studying it since I was a young teenager. But my interest from the beginning have almost always been surrounding the films, the
Hmm.
fighters and the events and the history surrounding the films, because I wanted to go back in time. I wanted to see
Oh
that stuff.
yes.
Guys like you and guys like our friends who are posting, they have a more encyclopedic perspective, and they know the records of all these different guys that I haven't followed. So I'm a little bit more of a specialist in that way, and I try and cover an area that's of most interest to me, and enjoy I always learn something from somebody else about boxing who's really into it.
Oh yes, no, no. Hey, we appreciate you there, Carl, for sure. Because hey, you're doing yeoman's work in terms of getting us this footage, and all the other collectors out there helping to make it a reality. Right there, I can only imagine what it would be like if we didn't have as much footage as we did now that is out there. So YouTube has helped kind of change that in some capacity, so you can direct people to different things. So I do feel good about just the fact that we do have what we have. I mean, there's something to appreciate there for sure. So never, I try not to lose light of that. Now, when it comes to the world of film, do you collect other sports as well, or other films in general, or mainly just boxing?
Mostly boxing. I have
Okay.
collected other things that I'm just curious about. Newsreels, some old TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
um, programs that I saw when I was a kid, or just sometimes I also have a service where for other people I'll transfer their film to video for them,
Oh,
home
awesome.
movies. So since I have the equipment, if I have the time, I offer that service mainly around the holidays when people want to give their home movies on video to family members and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
amazing the stuff you see, relatives traveling abroad and going to places that would be very difficult to go today, and seeing sites
Oh,
that are gone, um, seeing, the sites of airports and prop planes and people exiting out on the practically on the runway, walking in. I mean, just stuff like, isn't that a hazard there? Um, uh, real shipwrecks, that some family
oh yeah.
captured, stuff like that. So it's really that's fun. So yeah, I have an interest in that. Mostly boxing. I only have so much time, and it takes up a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of time just to try and acquire and collect the stuff that I have, and I only have so much space, so I'm very selective about
Yeah.
what I'm going to bring in.
Okay, got it, got it. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense right there. That is good stuff. I appreciate that there, Carl. And I know I had noticed that you were involved in music as well, right? So that's a passion of yours as well. Can we talk about a little bit about that, the music world? Because you can play the was that a bass guitar that I see a
I
picture of
play
you with?
slide guitar,
Oh, side guitar,
slide guitar,
slide. Okay.
slide guitar, acoustic and electric. I've been playing since I was
Ah.
in my teens, and um, uh, long story short, I got out of film school, and it was a perfect storm of disaster because this was a period of time where video was coming in
Mm-hmm.
to the industry, and the industry, they were looking for radio and television people with video experience, and I had strictly film experience. So I had these skills which they could have used if they had they had hired me and get it, but they were looking for someone who already knew that technology, and I at that point wasn't familiar enough with video technology. And but at the same time, I was always interested in music
Mm-hmm.
and a fan of music, and was playing music on my own. And something called the independent record movement was really getting going. And I took the skills that I had acquired as a photographer and filmmaker, and they transferred over to music production. I know that sounds really strange, but we're talking about tracks and reels and material and sort of linear editing. And plus, I'd had a background, a static background in music. I helped start a record store, so music was around me, and I was hearing all the new stuff that was coming up. So I formed a record label, and my interest is mainly in instrumental music. I write and compose instrumental guitar music, either small groups or ensemble stuff. Some of it's ambient, some of it's more roots, Americana based stuff. A lot of stuff you'd say would be like very soundtrack music, very much like that. So I've been doing that as well. And and then I forayed, I parlayed all that stuff into web design. That was kind of my vocation for a number of years. So all of
Okay.
my media experience, I was able to put that into web design and streaming media online and video production and stuff like that. So I kind of cobbled together a career, I guess I would say.
Oh no, that is awesome. That is awesome right there. You're a renaissance man, Carl. I mean, that's some amazing stuff you're doing out there. That is.
You as well.
You know, I bought a guitar last year, an acoustic guitar. It's a Yamaha. I got with some buddies, and I was like, "Hey, what's a good starter guitar?" Now I'm not any good right now. I mean, I can't really string together a good riff or anything, but I'm working on it. I'm gonna be taking some lessons here within the next month or two as well.
Good. Just have fun. That's all you got to do is have fun, and it'll happen.
Oh yes, indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Again, folks, we're here with Carl Weingarten here at Fight Films Guy. We've been able to chat with him about just some of the amazing work behind what he does, his career, fight footage, what's out there, what's to come. So we thank everyone who is here in the mix, who has been here, and man, there's so much, Carl. I'm not gonna hold you too much longer there, because I know you gotta get on and do your thing. But yeah, there's so much there
Do you
that
have
runs
any
through my mind thinking about it.
Do you have any
You
questions about anything that I posted, or any that any any particular posts or anything?
And fans out there, if you have any questions, feel free to share them as well. One of the things I wanted to ask you,
Uh-huh.
one of the things I did want to ask you, Carl, and it's just something that I thought about, and I know everyone is different, but I know for a fact I've seen other people use sort of the film that you went about putting together and all that stuff. How do you feel about that, Carl? Because some people want attribution and some don't give attribution,
Yeah.
things of that nature. But I know that I know for a fact I've seen your content on a number of channels.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. If somebody writes and asks me, can I embed this in my channel? I'm probably going to say okay. But a lot of guys will lift stuff. I guess what I'm not comfortable with is those guys that will just lift them, download and lift the material. Um, it it goes another generation, so the quality goes down.
Mm-hmm.
They put their own logo on the front of it, and they present it as something that they've done. I don't
Yeah,
appreciate that. I try and give credit whenever I or ask permission whenever possible when I'm utilizing stuff, and the vast majority of the stuff I have in the channel is from my own collection. It's the stuff that
yeah,
I own the materials. Um, so in some cases, I've asked people, you know, uh, please don't do that. You don't colorize it and put it on your site.
oh yeah,
Just ask me and just put it on as it is, or work with me or whatever. I can be good with that. But unfortunately, that's kind of the internet, and YouTube is kind of the Wild West as far as you know
yeah,
outlaw behavior is concerned. So there's only so much that you can do, and I guess my real concern about it is just the quality of the stuff. Everything
oh
I
yeah,
do. I'm really thinking about how can I present this at the best quality possible. And if not, then just try and enhance it just a little bit. And so when you see stuff that's up there that's really poor copies, and they haven't really made much effort, they're just putting it up to get some clicks. That I'm not into that. I think we can do better.
oh yeah.
So I'm just saying, if you like something that I'm doing, go ahead and send me a note, and we can try and work something out.
Oh yeah, hey, I don't think that's asking much there, Carl, for sure. And I think that would be the amendable thing or an approach towards it for sure, because yeah, that quality, it does matter. And then just the fact that you built this collection and you are sharing it, and I think that goes a long way right there. So I'm certainly all for it. And so for those listening, watching, you see any of that footage out there, you're gonna know distinctly it came from Carl there, because he has a bunch of great footage there. And I continue to watch and check out your videos to this day. Now, and I was looking actually, and you have some that you started putting on there like 14 years ago, Carl. And what do you think? Would you have thought? So YouTube at that time, in the early days, is it kind of amazing you to see how it shifted or the growth at least?
Well, here's what's interesting. This is the site that's on there now, the Fight Films Guy site.
Mm-hmm.
That's my third site. The
Oh wow,
previous two that go back to like 2005, YouTube took those down. I
wow.
put up one site that I think I had a couple hundred videos and maybe, I think at the time, something like 500 followers. You
Okay.
know, at that time, that was a fair amount.
Yeah.
YouTube
Yeah.
said content violation, somebody complained, and they would took it
Wow.
down. So I spent a few months rebuilding it under a new name, tried to stay out of trouble by posting mostly older material,
Mm-hmm.
occasionally slipping in some stuff from the 80s or 90s. Again, there was a complaint from somebody
Mm.
and it disappeared. So since then, I think the rules and whatnot have gotten kind of laxed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there's less scrutiny about this particular material that because it's so common now,
Mm-hmm.
and they made it so that if someone files a complaint, they have to they have to show some proof of ownership, but they have to show cause.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So so I think uh, there are times where individual videos, someone might say something and then you have to take it down for whatever reason, especially if it's their material and it's their choice. I mean, I'm showing it, just because I have a copy of it doesn't mean that I own that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were videos I put up. I mean, I had put up on the previous versions clips of fights,
Mm-hmm.
and I also put together short videos I thought would be kind of interesting ways of looking at fights. One in particular was who's in the audience.
Mm.
Together a video because I would watch these films, and even as a kid watching on TV, oh, look who's there at ringside, look who's there in the
Oh yeah.
audience, and you'd see them, Burt Lancaster, doing that, or John Wayne looking up at Floyd Patterson getting knocked around the ring. So um, I thought I would do that, and I would kind of highlight the face and say, the celebrities in the audience. Well, ESPN Classic did exactly the same thing a few months later. They did
Oh
a
wow.
segment where who's in the audience. So I knew,
Wow.
and this happened more than once, where I had a concept, and somebody there got a look at it and said, "Oh, we should
Wow.
try and we should do that." So you got to take that with a grain of salt. I did license some material to the History Channel,
Mm-hmm.
and was in touch with and provided footage for them. And uh, I think somebody at ESPN wanted some material. Some people at Sports Illustrated want to see when the Max Baer, the Jim Braddock movie came out with
Oh
Max.
yeah.
They wanted to see Max Baer looked like, so I sent them some stuff like that. So
Oh wow.
that's unfortunately the name of the game. If you're the little guy with a good idea, somebody's going to see it. Somebody's going to use it. That's the way
Yeah.
it
That.
goes.
Yeah. That happens. That is pretty crazy there. But that's cool that you got the likes and some stuff. And I think about that, like say there are some of these establishments, museums, or whatever it may be that have some of this old footage. I know they would need someone like yourself or others specialized who know about boxing from that period, or someone who could spot a face and be like, okay, yeah, I know what boxer that is, because I'd imagine there's not going to
Right.
be a ton of staff there who's going to be aware of who some of these boxers
No,
are.
some of these archives, they're cataloging who knows how much material from what sources. I mean,
Hmm.
anywhere foreign films, newsreels, clips, home movies, TV thing, they're doing the best they can to index stuff. So when I'd go in and occasionally get access and look at it, I'm going, that's not who that is. That's not the same. This is not that fight. What are they talking about? And I would love to do more of that kind of work.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but boxing is boxing archives. It's not a big priority. It's still pretty much up to independent
Yeah.
fans and collectors. Um, who knows? I mean, who knows where it may go? I mean, I would love for it to be a really a Ken Burns level
Oh yes.
documentary about the history of the sport, at least through the 20th century,
Hmm.
and using this footage and enhancing it, and because it's a very important period of history. I mean, the sport is certainly declined a great deal, but there was this
Yeah.
period from the 20s up to this and past the Second World War where it was the top. It was in the newspapers. It was the top of sports business and everybody's attention. And those fighters and people involved, they were huge celebrities and garnered, you know, huge respect. And
Yeah.
their their work, their those events, as you know, at times impacted world history. They
Oh
were,
yeah.
the Louis Schmeling fights. I mean, that was
Amazing.
akin to any major heads of state having some giant meeting. I mean, it was at
Right.
that top, people put importance on that stuff, and that it meant a lot to people, and the circumstances of that fight and the people around it, and Lewis's importance for the emotional and
Hmm.
identification of all of Americans with him as an idol was so important at the time, as were ball players and stuff at the time. It was really, really a huge deal. If you ever get a
Oh
chance
yeah.
to see, um, I think it's just called The Fight. It's a documentary that was made roughly 20 years ago, something. I think it's been shown on PBS, and it tells the story of the Louis Schmeling, those two fights, and information about both of them and what they both went through. And
Hmm.
um, and it's a real it's an example of how, when we look back on history, we can look at the two opponents with a balanced view from a distance rather than a partisan view, which at the time, and we can appreciate
Hmm.
them and what happened even more so. That's
Oh,
part of what interests me as well.
yes, no doubt. Yeah, I've seen different things on it. I don't know if I've seen that specifically. I'm gonna have to look back for sure now, but I do think that's probably the most significant fight in boxing history, right there, just in terms of what it meant for that particular period of time, the magnitude, and just how many eyes were watching.
Right.
Because
Eyes
you can
and
only
ears.
imagine if it were like today and we had all these streaming platforms and things of that
Mhm.
nature, that would be insane.
Yeah. It would be totally insane.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with that right there. No, that's a good point there, Carl. And hey, I think that yeah, getting more of those Ken Burns like documentaries that are out there. I know he has a master class. I was watching it at one point, and yeah, it's good to highlight some of these stories. And there's so many good stories. Like,
Right.
of course, like anything, these boxers are from different walks of life, but just so many crazy stories. You get the good, bad, ugly, all of that wrapped into it. But
Mhm.
I mean, there are so many movies that could be made on some of these individuals who are truly characters of their time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many. I mean, I remember when the Jim Braddock movie came out,
Oh yes.
which it was good. It was entertaining. It was a story worth telling. But I
Hmm.
thought, you know, Max Bayer, he's more akin to, and that Braddock was he was a man of his era, of his time,
Hmm.
in his values and everything. Max, strangely, is more akin to modern times
Yes.
in that he had all these opportunities and he wasted them away. In some
Hmm.
cases, not all cases. He had these tremendous gifts and he didn't quite value them the way other people wanted to. Not unlike today, where we see people rise and then, why did you make that stupid mistake and ruin your career? Or why, which to me is more akin to contemporary times of people,
Oh yeah.
acquiring fame and wealth very quickly and then losing it very quickly for stupid
Mhm.
reasons.
Oh
Just
yeah.
my opinion. And Bear was more akin to that. So for me, he was the more interesting story.
Oh yes. Yes, yes,
Uh,
he was. And I have a book. I have it, the book that Colleen Acock and the other gentleman they wrote. I have it here somewhere. I don't know, but I have a number of them now. But I'm with you there. And if I think about, like, if I had a top 10 list of boxers I most want to hang out with, Max Baer, he would be right up there towards the
yeah,
top,
he'd
right
be right
there.
up there. If we had the stuff to hang with him, I don't know how
Oh
that would
yeah,
be a rough. That could be a rough hang.
yeah, it could be for sure. But yeah, yeah, he was a great, interesting character there for sure. So I'm definitely in agreement there with Carl. And Ratchclot 222, he asked, "Do you watch any of the current boxing here, Carl? In terms of what's happening now? I know you mentioned Cotto Mosley, the good fight."
Wow.
But this current stuff going on, it's all over the place with different streaming platforms and such. But what are your thoughts on things here?
Well, it's the sport is as a national or international sport has declined in respect, and that it's no longer really the top level for the networks stop showing it and stuff. But there's still a huge fan base for it.
Hmm.
I still follow the fights today. I don't follow them all closely. I follow them mostly at the championship level, or
Okay.
if I see some fighter who's intriguing because of skills or their character. Um, the rise of women boxing is
Oh yeah.
fascinating. Um, they have really come a long way in a very short time, and there's some great, exciting fights, as you know.
Oh yes.
Um, but the the problems with the sport has been the same problems as for a very long time is money. Too few people have control, and they're greedy, and the fights that we want take forever, or they
Hmm.
happen. If they happen, it's too late, and the fighters no longer can live up to what we had expected. And that used to be rare, and now it's more and more. We see fighters come up to a certain level, and then there's the top level where they just we to get them to fight
Yeah.
and move, keep the sport moving. They've lost sight of the fact that the sport needs to keep moving and developing, progressing to keep people interested.
Hmm.
We have some of the top fighters now are got to be of the oldest groups of contenders ever,
Yeah.
because there's not enough younger people coming in, and they're not moving fighters and fights having enough fights to move them along.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and that's too bad. I mean, people complain. They talk about, well, you used to be run by the boxing used to be run by the mob, and that was terrible. The thing is, it was functional. They made sure business worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fighters came up. I mean, if you listen to I have a recording of what fight is it? I think it's um, Nova and Gleno. I have the
Okay.
audio of that, and you can hear the commentators talking about, well, this fight's coming up, and whoever wins that, they're going to fight this. I mean, the promoters were already like 2 fights ahead.
Oh
Depending on what
yeah.
happens tonight, you two are going to meet in September. And there was like no questions asked. You're going to fight because that's your job. And this is what the promoters are going to do.
Hmm.
That's why there was so much going on. And now it's a log jam, and people are quibbling about a few pounds here and there. And the difference between, well, I'm going to hold out for, another $10 million and stuff like, well, if you
Yeah.
just have 2 fights with guys, you could make more than that, but instead you're holding up at a logjam about one fight. If you keep fighting, you keep making more money. How about that? So, and the
Yep.
fans like that. So it's, we get the top names, the showdowns are just there. It's very rare. And it's almost surprising when they turn out to be even close to what we imagine or hope they would be. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
often they are a disappointment, and that's really too bad. And it's not their fault. They're trying to make a living, but it's an unregulated sport.
Hmm.
The franchise sports are huge because
Right.
the organizations, they control things, they make sure business gets taken care of. They take care of all of these people. People are paid certain amount. They can ask for more money if they want to. New players are coming up all the time.
Hmm.
In boxing, it's really just a few people who are controlling things, and they're the attitude is, I'm going to make as much money as possible from this next thing, instead of, well, you can make the same amount of money and even more money if you do a couple of more things as well.
Oh yeah.
But who am I?
Well, hey, no, great point there, Carl Rasclott. He's in agreement. I'm in agreement as well. You're right. There's a lot of that going on there, and especially for most of the boxers to only fight maybe twice a year. So just think about that as well. All of
Well,
that for
I
two
think
fights.
that is like, that's ridiculous. I mean, you think twice a year. I mean, that's almost retired when you compare that to
Yeah,
previous generations, even a couple of generations ago.
yeah.
Um, they, for instance, Joe Louis, when he came back
Hmm.
after retirement, fought and lost to Ezra Charles in 1950.
Hmm.
He still had hopes for a rematch, but it seemed like unlikely at the time. Ezra Charles was a very busy champion. He had a bunch of other contenders to fight. There was a lot going
Hmm.
on. Lewis had, in the next year, before he fought Marciano, he had an amazing run of fights. He's like
Yes.
37. He fought like 8 times at least in the year. I don't have
Yeah.
his record in front of me, but and he fought top contenders because he wanted that title shot until finally he ran up against Marciano.
Oh yes. Yeah.
That's Can you imagine that today? Can you imagine suddenly somebody like like Tyson Fury having like 5 fights over the next? Can you imagine that? I mean, the
No,
fans would
not at
probably
all.
like the prospect of that, but um, it's it's really uh, the focus is just making as much money as possible,
Hmm.
one fight at a time, and not thinking ahead. That it's going to be the accumulation of income over a period of time if you just keep things moving. But um, this is not new. Um, I acquired some tapes of interviews of Rocky Marciano a
Hmm.
year or two before he died, and including his final interview the morning before his plane crash. And in
Oh,
one of
okay.
these interviews, he's asked about, what do you think of boxing, etc. And he's like, it's just today, it's just the money game. And he talks about that people aren't the real fighters, the top aren't fighting each other on a regular basis. And he's making this observation in 1969. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, even then, I mean, there were changes, and we're down the line that much farther, seeing even the more extremes of it, and the more money that's involved. And who was it? I think the governor of New York in the 1920 or said something about he wasn't going to sanction one of Dempsey's fights, I
Oh
think.
yeah, against they wanted the commission wanted him to face Harry Wills, but I know
Well,
that
this is
was one of them as
I'm
well.
not sure it was. It might have been Will. I don't think so. But the point I'm making is
Hmm.
that the argument of the governor is fighters shouldn't make more than the president of the United States.
Oh,
Which I
right.
thought, really?
Oh yeah, and he was making a heck of a lot of money than
Yeah.
Jack Dempsey. It was
I mean, you look at
amazing.
that today, of course.
Oh,
I
oh
don't. I
yeah,
don't. Even,
yeah,
I don't even think you could pay some of these guys to spar with somebody for the salary that they pay the president with 250,000 a year or something like that. It's just a token. But
right.
I just thought it was a huge, at the time that you're just doing sports. You shouldn't be paid that much.
Oh yes, yes, that is funny. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's amazing. I have heard that sort of quote there. Yeah, Dipsy's one of my favorites to go back and watch. There, just a larger than life guy at that time in terms
Yeah.
of as you were kind of alluding to, in terms of what it meant in boxing to be the world heavyweight champion. Then you were the Dipsy. He was at one point maybe the most popular figure on earth, and he was the world heavyweight champion, certainly in sports, and this was running alongside the Babe Ruths of the world as well.
Yeah.
And the heavyweight championship, of course, we've had some great champions that come about, but if we look at it today in terms of the parallels with the other sports like the NFL and all of that stuff, not quite the same right now.
No, it's too bad. They in the pursuit of making more and more money, um, and part of it stems back to um, the alphabet um, commissions,
Oh yes,
um,
yes.
that they were created originally to help unify world titles,
Hmm.
to help unify and to retain, so there would be a one champion in every division. And
Hmm.
over time, they got greedy and they sort of split off. And this happened, I think it goes back to the 50s, but it became most pronounced in the 60s, um, uh, when Ali was first champion,
Hmm.
and then got one organization stripped him his title. So he had Ernie Terrell was declared another champions. So they got them
Oh yeah.
together to fight to settle that. But then, as wonderful, as amazing as the first Ali Frazier fight was,
Hmm.
Ali was out. We had two legitimate champions who could make claim to it.
Oh yes.
And after that, then we started seeing more divisions with these boxing commissions not unifying titles, resisting unifying titles, insisting that their champion is the champion. So we have multiple title holders. So the public inevitably is going to start losing interest. They
Hmm.
can't keep up with it. Part of the beauty of making sports attractive and functional is that you kind of keep it simple for the
Yeah.
fans. You know where the game is being held. You know what the rules are. You know who's going to show up and play. You know who the champion is. And when they have a challenger, we'll inform you who this challenger is, and we'll make it exciting. And then that fight will spell out, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So once you really make it confusing, people are going to lose interest, and they're going to start gravitating toward stuff that other sports that they can more closely relate to, and it's more interesting to them. Now, old timers like me, we're going to still try and keep track of the moving target of who's the
Hmm.
ultimate champion this month, and um, it's really helped keep the sport out of the mainstream as much as it could. Um, and it'd be too bad if they could. Again, there's no commission, there's no centralized
Hmm.
authority. If they could unify titles or make rules about unifications. For instance, Some commission could say, there has to be one title holder in every division. Now, you guys, you other boxing commissions, you can have your champions if you want to, but we all agree there is going to be one main champion. If he happens to be your champion, great. But otherwise, there's one that for the public is going to know. It's just the one, and you guys can fight it out. But it's going to would take some authority to make that happen. And
Yeah.
it's too bad. It's easy to break stuff. It's hard to put stuff back together. But that's kind of the way it goes, unfortunately. But we are blessed in a period where there are fighters who are immensely talented,
Mm-hmm.
and would do well in any era. And it's just tragic that they
Mm-hmm.
don't, for the most part, they don't have enough competition to really give us full measure of
Oh yeah.
their abilities. The fact that some of them go undefeated for so long with such little resistance,
Mm-hmm.
point where it's hard to tell, are they really that good, or is it just their challenges really aren't that good and they look that much better? And we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
Or they look unbeatable coming up and they face a big test and they fail the test, and then they can't get it together after that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's telling, and that's too bad. It's unfortunate. And as I think even a lot of these fighters like Ali and Ernie Shavers talked about,
Mm-hmm.
the quality of their challenges made them who they were.
Indeed.
Marciano said of Walcott, he it was such a tough fight. He made Marciano work that hard to get the title. He made him as great as he was by
Mm-hmm.
pushing him into that danger zone, that real danger zone, that life and
Oh yeah.
death. And there's they're beautiful to watch now. Some of these guys, they
Mm-hmm.
incredible movement and stamina and power punching and reaction time and highly skilled. And it's almost like a dance. Like, when is it going to be tough for you? I mean, you
Yeah.
want to see them, challenged, because that's how we can really measure them down the line. And some guys got their whole career, and we're still sort of asking questions, or we're debating because
Yeah.
we don't really know, because we haven't really seen them in those situations, or they end up fighting their biggest challenges comes very late in their career, and so we only
Mm-hmm.
see a shadow of what might have been with them. um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of the too bad part, and I'm hoping that we will still continue to see real talent come up, and then the sport can reemerge in whatever new way,
Oh
to
yes.
capture its part of the public excitement. And it's it's uh, it's a real challenge right now.
Oh yeah. Certainly. Certainly. And what I will say is, just from being involved here on the amateur side, I do amateur officiating, and I'm with the organization here in DC where we handle the amateur boxing that takes place in the area, right, Carl? And I will say that there's still athletes out there, some very good athletes, young athletes, some very young amateurs who are coming through the system. Some of them are gonna, go on to live their life outside of the sport, but there will be those who are going to enter that gauntlet of boxing and try to continue to carry forward. And one of the things is now, with the advent of social media and all of that stuff, you have a lot of these amateurs and stuff. They come out already with the following and such. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues to evolve there, because for some of them, they don't have to necessarily fight the best competition to continue to build their name, because they're coming with some name value as it starts. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of what the top looks like here, let's say 10, 15 years down the road, as we continue to see any form of involvement here with the sport.
You know, you sort of prompted me. There's a film, a
Mm-hmm.
documentary about a contemporary boxer that has been made by a director named John Sipple. It
Okay.
hasn't been released yet. They're looking for distribution. It was shot in Detroit, and it follows two two young men in Detroit from impoverished backgrounds, and one using boxing to climb up out of it, and his journey, first just curious about boxing and then getting a real championship level trainer to work with him. And I don't know, I think it was shot over 2 or 3 years, I don't know exactly. I licensed some footage for them, just a little bit.
Oh wow.
But I saw a part of it, and it's just really good. It's in black and white. You
Oh
see,
wow. Okay.
they're working with the community. Sorry, we're near an airport over here.
Oh
Um,
yeah, no problem. Well.
they're, they have community organizations where amateur fighters get together informally with crowds of friends and families, and and they'll some of it, it'll be some fierce competition or just sparring.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the other guy, becomes a teacher and a coach for young wrestlers. And
Okay.
it's really fascinating. Great film of contemporary society and people, um, looking to step up in the world and enhance and do good in their communities. And they've kind of gone through some stuff in their own lives, and they made some
Mm-hmm.
decisions to move forward and to do what's best to enhance, um, their life situation. And it's very inspiring. It's really cool. Anyway, it's called Etched in Pavement, and I
Okay.
think I think there's a website for it now, so I don't know. You can get a glimpse of it, but
All
I
right.
they're still in the process of looking for distribution. And I would suggest anybody who's a follower of boxing today would take a look at it. And it's really cool movie. It's really great. Anyway,
Oh, that's
anyway, I just thought
awesome.
of that when you were mentioning that. So,
That is awesome. Yep, yep. I just see their website right here. It sounds good. I'm definitely going to check that out there.
yeah,
At least what's available out there, Carl. No,
yeah,
appreciate you sharing that. And I think
yeah,
some of those that are listening, who will be listening on the replay, all of that stuff, they'll appreciate that as well. And then to have it in black and white, yeah, there's something about that. Kind of taking it back. Pretty amazing. So good stuff there. No, I appreciate everything. One other thing I wanted to ask there, Carl, just
yeah.
in general, in terms of you have all this content. Do you still kind of just go back and look at some of these fights that you've put out there as well? Like I say, for instance, like Dempsey Willard, I've probably seen that hundreds of times and things of that nature. I'm seeing the same thing. I know what's going to happen. Same with some other fights and all that stuff. But I'll go back and watch them. Are you? Do you still do that? Just go back and just kind of look at some of these fights, even here to this day.
I'll, it depends. It depends.
Okay.
Most of the time, I'm interested in and material and thinking about how I can present it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and it's some of this stuff I've seen a gazillion times.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I released a short documentary on the Ketchel Johnson fight uh,
Okay.
a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, I that was one of the first films I'd collected as a kid. And in fact, when I
Wow.
first saw it, I had no expectations of it. I just thought, well, there's two fights on this reel. There's this Jack Johnson guy, and then there's Muhammad Ali. And so I'm looking at this film. Oh, this is cool, old film. And then the end happens, and I jumped up. I was in my bedroom looking at it on the wall. I
Oh yeah.
jumped up and yelled like I was somebody in the audience. It was like so like what?
Yeah.
So so I've seen that like a million times. But once you get into editing, and what I did is I had several copies of that footage, and then luckily a collector sold me a reel that had a round I had never seen.
Oh
And so
wow.
I had this additional material. I had it scanned to high definition. And it's really amazing when you're looking at stuff and with clarity and looking closely, the stuff that the details that you see. So watching that film as I'm putting together the narrative and the scenario of it and choosing the sections that I want to show, it's amazing just watching the movement and the fighters. Even if I'm watching the same sequences over and over again, you really get familiar with how they move, and you start to see they're looking different ways. They're looking in their corner, or that was a serious exchange, or
Hmm.
somebody's laughing, or the ref's yelling at them. It's stuff that's hard to see just at a glance, but if you're watching it really closely in detail over and over, you start to see more of what's going at people in the audience. There's a
Hmm.
there's a section in the film I couldn't help this. As I was researching newspaper articles about that fight, I was looking for reports of that fight in the days following, and what the writers and the ringside people were actually saying was going on.
Hmm.
And there's a famous picture, and it's taken at ringside, and the camera's looking up. It's a perfect shot. I wish the original was still available somewhere. All we have is just a newspaper print. But there's
Okay.
Johnson kind of leaning back with his gloves up, and Ketchell's in a full windmill. His one arm is behind his back, and he's swung like, you know, over the top so hard that he's twisted himself. And it's just this amazing shot of, somebody who's thrown this haymaker punch and missed.
Oh wow.
And it's just this great action shot. Well, as I was looking at the film, I found that moment
Wow.
was, because it's very hard to, I just, after a while,
Hmm.
you get so familiar with the way things look. You're able to start picking out certain action and certain moments. And so I found that moment. So I ran it back and looked. Yep, that's exactly it. And you could see the camera guy at ringside holding up his camera and
Oh wow.
snapping it and putting it down. So in the documentary, I using the film and the photo, I edited a sequence where you actually see the photo, and you see in slow motion and zoomed in, you see the fighters in that moment, and the guy taking the picture of it and then sitting back down. It's pretty, again,
Oh
geeking
yeah.
out here, but that's for me. That's part of what makes it fun. It's a little bit of a time travel experience, just a little bit.
Okay, good to go. Yeah, this is one that collectors got. I because whenever you release something, I'll get a notification or whatnot on your YouTube channel, and I skipped over that one right there because I have seen the fight a number of times, or at least footage of it. I'm gonna check it out down here for sure, and I'll drop it in the chat for those as well. That's pretty awesome. And one of the other ones I'll mention there that you had posted that I hadn't seen that was pretty amazing. This was several months back when you put the Gunboat Smith sparring video out
Oh,
there,
right,
and he's
yeah,
sparring Bob Armstrong, the
yeah,
former colored world heavyweight champion.
yeah.
And as far as I know, that's like the only footage of Bob Armstrong that I recall ever seeing. So it's pretty amazing to see him there
Yeah,
sparring with a Gunboat.
yeah, yeah. That was like, I was surprised I came across that, and
Wow.
that was from the UK, and I got it from a friend of mine in the UK. It was so great to have that, and I'm. It's again, it is another example. There's likely more of that material.
Oh yes.
So there was only a clip that was shown, but um, getting access to those archives, especially like BBC, there's sort of like this, this wall where you
Oh
can't,
yeah.
or not to single them out,
Yeah.
because who knows what treasures they have. Um,
Oh yes.
but there's a lot of material that they're only going to present it if it's of use for them to present it. I mean,
Hmm.
there is a value for them to hold it. If they distribute it, then it gets replicated and it loses its value. And, quite frankly, they're an archive. They have stuff to retain. They hopefully make a listing available so that if people want to license that material, they can do that.
Oh yeah.
And that's quite a challenge. It's there are people uh, They spent a lot of time just trying to get index of material. And as you mentioned before, a lot of the people that work in these archives, they don't necessarily know everything that's there.
Right. Yes.
Or there's material that they're not really concerned about at a given time. Um, I recently acquired some home movies by a, a political activist at an
Mm-hmm.
estate sale. And I just thought, well, this could be. She was involved with concerts, and I thought, well, wow, there might be some rare concert footage,
Oh
of
yes.
famous artists. Well, it turns out not to be that. It turned out just to be home movies of her early marriage. And I contacted an organization that I thought would really be interested, but they were not. They were not interested in her personal life, only her public
Oh wow.
political. So I thought, well, okay, well, whatever. So you never know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
stuff that goes is there. It goes underappreciated for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and little by little, these archives are trying to get stuff rendered onto to digital, and digitally preserved and restored. But it's a slow process. There's a lot of stuff to go through,
Oh
and
yeah.
um, and there has to be a demand for it. And many of these outfits, they're not hugely staffed. There's only so much
Yeah.
staffing to go around to do things, and new material is coming in all the time. So something that's been there waiting, it's gonna wait that much longer.
Oh
So
yeah.
again, so it comes down to, in many cases, private collectors and
Mm-hmm.
dedicated fans who keep an ear out. I got lucky a few times, got some exclusive things just because I was paying attention, and missed a couple of opportunities, but it's kind of the way it goes.
Oh yeah, yeah, one of those things that. But yeah, I'm glad we have people like yourself out there. I try to reach out to some places. I got with Reuters at one point. Like this might have been a year ago. I was trying to convey the potential of them, or asking in a way that they potentially have some footage of some old boxing stuff that maybe is unidentified and all that. I never quite got everything synced in terms of explaining it in a way to get that understanding of what I was seeking. So I'd imagine that's kind of a challenge there, and one you kind of live with there as a collector, trying to reach out to some of these places and things as well. So very interesting process for sure. But you have put a number of things out there, Carl, and man, it's such a pleasure and a treat for those that are interested in boxing history, because this is great footage to have, great stories, great fighters from the eras and times where the sport was very different, and
Mhm.
there's something
Yeah.
about that appreciation, and that's something we can't let die off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a pleasure for me. I mean, I love sharing this stuff with people, with other fans, and getting responses. And you like it when, of course, when people like it. People also have criticism or something to say. And I figure it's a way for me to learn something, or
Oh yeah,
maybe I missed something or a point that they see. Everybody has their own perspective on any given, you know, about footage. They're going to see it in the way they see it.
yeah.
Um, so to me, it's all good. I like debating with people. I mean,
Yeah.
I like to argue, but I don't get personal about it. It's like you can have your opinion. You're all right. If you like it,
Yeah.
help keep this alive. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, as I continue to grow my channel, I know what you're talking about there, Carl. So I
Yeah.
totally imagine. It's funny. Sometimes you just have to, hey, just let them keep going on their own. It's one of those funny things. But no, this has been absolutely great. It's been a pleasure. Nearly 2 hours of discussion here. This
Oh
is
my
true
God.
boxing history here, folks. True
Pleasure for
boxing
me.
history. Oh no, no, this is great, and I guess you have last thing there, Carl, so people can follow you on your channel, and you do have a website, and you post some articles there about the videos that you do as well, Carl, as well. And what is that again? What is that website?
I don't have it. It's just
Let me see. And I know it. I think it's. on your channel. It's like oh, you know what? I got it. Fightcollector.blogspot.com.
Yeah, it's a blog spot a
Yep.
website, so it's got
I used to use
that
the
long
blogspot,
convoluted
adult back in
name.
the day.
It's just that's what I started a long time ago, and just and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. So I just paste the link, and then people can click and see it. So basically, that's the place where I'll write at length about that particular footage, and I usually try and post it in the YouTube on the YouTube page as
Okay.
well. But a lot of times the YouTube page is just sort of mainly showing it and just having a synopsis there. But in some occasions I've written, more extensively, and so I leave that for a different spot there.
Oh, okay, good to go. Yeah, and I know I've reached out to you on YouTube in the comments, left a comment like, "Hey, Carl, I'm at da 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 da." So I know you're on there checking and watching. Now, this is good stuff, Carl. Again, folks, here with Carl Weingarten, Fight Films guy right here, and I had dropped the YouTube there in the chat for those that will be listening. If you go to YouTube, you put at Fight Films guy, the channel will pop up. And trust me when I tell you, you've likely seen some of his videos floating around here, especially if you're into these older eras of boxing. So it has been an absolute pleasure there, Carl, to have you on, especially for this amount of time. And hey, hopefully we could do it again at some point in the future, especially with you continuing to release more things here.
Yeah,
So I'm going to definitely be on the lookout for that, Carl.
would love it. Love it. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you to everyone who joined in.
Yes.
Just drop by, show some love. Be sure to subscribe to Carl there at Fight Films Guy, as mentioned. I'm going to be posting more shorts about this interview. Great stuff, great historic content there for sure. So, thank you all. We're going to be heading out, and we hope you have a good rest of your week and weekend.
Okay.